Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GANs processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
And I just wanted to thank Elias for providing that for me and for others. It's been played over and over again, and it's very nice. Thank you, Elias.
Thank you very much, everybody. Before I get into it, I just want to give you one thought so that I'd like you to carry that on through this whole presentation today, because Stefania brought up a key point, and this is directly related to the giving and taking, and we are talking about that today. But the reference to the cup of the breathing cup is very, very important, because in order to take in the energy from the breathing cup, we have to exhale first. So that's a normal observation, that if we exhale, that's the giving, and then we can take. And so that's the sequence. But please notice that when we take from the cup, we exhale. We don't exhale back into the cup. So the point here is that the giving and the taking is not from one and the same source. This is the binding energy where the dog is chasing its tail.
Sorry about that. We've seemed to have a couple different people have their mics. Keep an eye on your mics, everyone, so that Alex can make his presentation without interruption. And if it's a problem, let us know, and we'll put you back into the attendees or into the,
And so this is the most difficult thing for us to understand, that this giving and taking and the one-to-one relationship with the source of the giving and the point of the taking, and to understand that those are not the only two dimensions that are at play. And so the giving is not necessarily directed, but the taking is directed. And so the giving is unconditional, and the taking is conditional. And in our society on this planet, we're doing an enormous amount of taking. And so it's very difficult to discuss this subject without making social commentary, being sarcastic, or making other statements that are inappropriate. So I will refrain from that, because this is an educational class. And so as we are bringing everyone together and understanding that one of the reasons there is censorship on this planet is because there are people who don't want to hear the truth because it's inconvenient. And, it's like saying, well, life is inconvenient. And that's just not right, is it? So I want to welcome everyone to this platform. This is the Keshe Foundation TV station, part of the Spaceship Institute, and it is growing. And so this chart here is not a representation of the foundation, it's just a representation of what has been brought together so far. So I want to thank all these communities for being here today, because it is a very special day in North America. Yes, this is a very special day. This is the 4th of July. And as such, this is the birthday of the Independence, Declaration of Independence for the Republic of the United States. And that is, shall we say, the lightning rod for the pursuit of happiness, which allows for life and liberty to come together in the pursuit of happiness. And we all like to be happy. And part of the things for being happy, we like to have a parade. And one of the nice things about a parade is to see what's coming down the road here. So we know that the universal body enhancement is coming down the road. We're not exactly sure how that's going to come. We do have the vertical enhancement unit, and that's following behind. And of course, we all like to have satisfaction. And so one of the greatest satisfactions, of course, is music. And so let the bands play, let the parades go, and let's let's say happy birthday to the United States of America. And I do wish everybody peace and happiness. And I wonder what this long-legged guy is doing here. But we'll talk about him in a moment, because this is the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute. This is a teaching on plasma science. We have graduated to the intermediate understanding classes. Today's class is Convergence. And my name is Alexander. I am from Canada. It is July the 4th, 2021. This is the Keshe Foundation North American Plasma Education Series. And so I want to welcome the Canadian team, the American team, the Mexican team, and all the members of the international team. And I welcome you today. It's a wonderful day in the universe. When we look at the teachings, we say we need more teachers. We say we're trying to bridge between the teaching that's in the archives, over 3,000 hours of teaching, and introduce the new students. But so the new students need to understand basic teaching, which started with terminology. And we gave intermediate and advanced teaching, which is all part of the basic teaching. And many of the advanced students have been participating in that, because you never stop learning, and repetition is very, very important. And it's most important to be able to explain. And this is a very difficult thing to explain when we don't have a reference. And so we're always trying to find this reference. And today's reference is actually the difference between the convergence and the divergence. And so we had to embellish that a little bit. We had to enhance our basic understanding. And we could do that because we completed basic training, basic teaching, so that we can communicate properly with the right words in the right context. And we can see that life is for learning. And one of the things that life teaches us, each and every one of us, because we were born with a brain, we had bones, we have a memory. We were able to transmutate energy. We had hormones who could interpret that. And of course, we would interact with the source of that energy, which was the PM ticks and is the PM ticks. And so this is the source of the creation of the energy. And in order to create something, the energy has to be bound together. And so there's a question is, which comes first, the giving or the taking? So the giving is first, because this energy is always giving and is looking for a home. And so we progress to the intermediate understanding, And this is what we're trying to discuss, because all in all, we know where we're going. We're trying to communicate with our soul and trying to bridge the knowledge. And we see how difficult it is and how shy we are, because as we get closer to the truth and we find that, ooh, wait a minute, we're in the minority. And we're actually in the minority in terms of the awareness, minority in terms of the discussion, but we're in the majority in terms of being universal souls. It is the minority that is actually having trouble. And that minority is roughly around 14%. And the problem is it's getting more and more difficult every day to rationalize and to justify this kind of behavior. And that's what's going on now. We are in the convergence point. So last week we discussed divergence and its relationship to the magnetical. This week we're going to discuss convergence with its relationship to the gravitational, because these are opposite forces, and magnetical and gravitational are opposite forces. And this is part of natural plasma. Natural plasma involves the giving and the taking. And isn't it interesting? And that's what we've talked about from all the countries around the world today. Everyone has been on this subject. So it's on everybody's mind, isn't it? Because we all in our life would like to understand how universe is created. And so there is an order of creation. And this creation is of matters. And we're not saying, is it plasma matter or physical matter? It's the universal order of the creation of matters. And it's an order, not a chaos. So words are important, okay? Words in the right context are important. And so when you look at the title now and you look at the cover of the book, what you're seeing is a convergence of the PM ticks coming together to create a matter. And now that you have this matter, what do we do with it? And so what we do with it is we have to interact. And so you get two matters that have a relationship. And somehow, some way, the energy goes from one matter, which is a product of the convergence of energy, and somehow it goes to another matter, which is the product of the convergence of energy. Well, you cannot have a convergence of energy and a convergence of energy. There has to be something in between. And so that is the structure of the light, the in-betweenness. And so the in-betweenness is where we're having a problem with, and we're not discussing that today. What we are discussing is field strength. What we are discussing is polarity. What we are discussing is a kind of transformation and a transportation. And that's all we're discussing today, because we're getting more into the meat of the situation here, to understand how the souls operate and what dimensions they operate, how the emotions operate and what dimensions they operate, and what range do we operate in here, and how do we transcend these ranges, and then how do we transcend these dimensions. And we're only at the beginning of this conversation, and we need to be able to articulate this much better and much more firmly, because we are absolutely on the right track, you see, because energy is always in motion. So we know that energy is always positive. You cannot have nothing. Nothing doesn't work. Nothing is nothing. Energy is something, and something is always something. And what it is dependent on its direction and its field strength. And so to determine that, you have to have a charge, and that charge is in motion. So we have a negative or a positive charge, and the negative gives and the positive takes. It's just a rule. It's just so that we understand which way we're going. And when the negative gives to itself and the positive takes from itself, that is a binding kind of energy. And that is very, very necessary. As you can see, when the PM ticks come together, they come together through the universe and they're looking for a home. When they find a cooperation, a relationship, something that they can have a common denominator to, and they start to create a little dance. And with that little dance is the beginning of the creation. Okay, so here we go. And this is the binding energy. So, and this energy is always, always, always in motion, and it's always, always, always everywhere, everywhere. Some we can see and some we can't see. But this plasma is a currency of life. And this currency of life is the transactional cost of motion. And so this plasma energy is the fuel for this motion. And the cost of this motion is this energy in motion. But there's no destruction, you see, the energy just keeps on coming. So when we say the two forces come together, they're not coming together to battle, they're coming together to create. And they keep coming because now they have a reason to come. And so when they come and keep coming, because you cannot grab onto it, you cannot hold it, you cannot stop it, it has to keep moving. So you end up with a rotating field, and that rotating field and its ability to maintain this rotating field is what we call field strength, and that is the z-axis, and that is the basis of plasma. So that is your first creation. And when we look at how the plasma is maintained, we see that there is a rotating field, which we refer to as the x-axis. There's a polar field, which we refer to as the y-axis. And then, of course, there's the dimension of the whole field, which is the z-axis. And we can refer to these by planes, the individual axes. But things are always working in combination. And we find when we have two poles the same, that they repel. And that's what we talked about last week, was repulsion. So by being able to flip the poles around, we have opposite poles, so now we can attract. And so this is the basis of attraction, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So when we're looking at the creation of plasma, we say that the PM ticks are magnetical and they are energy packs. And isn't it interesting that the virus is known this very, very well and is operating according to the rules of the universe? It's also don't understand the rules of the universe, and so therefore we're having difficulty with the current situation. But the current situation has a force field operating right now, and each force field has a combination of the antimatter, dark matter, and matter. And when that force field creates a balance, it creates a mag-grav condition. So that is the basis of the plasma. And so that is a field, but that field needs to interact with other fields. So we see that eventually we started with a point, but we end up with our Earth, our planet Earth. And so our planet Earth has manifested the same way. And so all of these rays which are coming, they are not all the same. Each of them has a different personality. Each of them has a different flavor. Each of them has a different field strength. And what's not shown here is that each of them has a different direction. They come from different directions. But here we have 5 rays coming from the same direction. And the question is, which one comes in and which one goes through? And we don't decide. That's the point. So when we look at the Earth decides. And one of the nice things about the Earth, it has a lot of variety. So it probably can absorb all of these rays. But when these rays come in, they have to go around. So they come in, they go around, and then they go out. And if that didn't happen, then this Earth would keep growing and growing and growing to the point where it would eventually run into problems. So to maintain the mag-grav position, which is the balance of the Earth, this energy has to be exchanged, and rightly so, because there are other planets. And yes, there is a sun, and the sun is emitting energy to us, and we are absorbing that energy. So the conventional idea is that the Earth is giving energy back to the sun. And yeah, that is correct, but not only. The Earth is also giving energy to the neighboring planets. And the Earth is also consuming energy through a lot of the activity on the Earth. And that energy is between the ground and the magnetosphere. And so that is the range on this planet. And so when the sun is emitting energy, which we say is magnetical, and we say that that is repulsion, so that energy is being absorbed by the Earth because the Earth is gravitational and it's attracting that energy. So is the sun emitting the energy exclusively for the Earth to attract the energy? No, no. And the sun is emitting energy all the way around. And we know that because when we see the sun in the summer, it's on one side. And when we just see the sun in the winter, it's on the other side. It's the same sun. So the energy, whether it's on one side or the other side, is the same energy. So the sun doesn't discriminate. We discriminate. We discriminate as to what we want and what we need. And so when you look at the Earth, not only does the Earth discriminate, but it's very selective. So for instance, we have copper in Chile, we have oil in the Middle East, we have gold in the Far East. Imagine if the Earth operated the way we do in our society, what a scrambled breakfast that would be. So there is energy, however, that does pass right through. So that is determined by the susceptibility. Do we attract or do we repel? Or do we just not even exist? Did you ever, when you walk down the street, who do you look at? You look at those who you're attracted to. You don't see the ones you're not attracted to, right? But because you don't see it, does that mean that they don't exist? I don't think so. I think what you have to realize is that the energy comes together from all different sides and that you are the focal point. So in order for you to be the focal point and to get more energy and to grow, this is part of the thing. The energy is coming in and you create a field, but to attract more energy, you have to have a gravitational field. And so this is the beginning, the balance between the magnetical and the gravitational. So the magnetical is first because the PM ticks are giving. It's just your point of view. For you, the first thing is to attract. No, you can't attract unless the magnetical field is being created. It is once the magnetical field is created, then you can attract because now you have a basis of operation. And then from there, you can create a balanced maggrav field. And so in essence, it wants to give and take, but not from itself. It wants to give to something and take from somewhere. And the choice of the giving and the taking is dependent on the environment. And so when we're saying the magnetical aspect and we look at from an atomic point of view, we say, well, the electron being the smallest with relationship to the electron, proton, neutron. So the electron is the giver, but the substructure of the electron is matter, antimatter, and dark matter. But the electron is magnetical. And so when we look at the neutron being the largest is the gravitational, but the substructure is matter, antimatter, and dark matter. And I don't understand why people can't see the difference. So let's put the two together. And I think now you can clearly see the difference between the core component of the electron and the neutron. So this is why one is magnetical and one is gravitational. So please study this picture carefully and you will see the difference. When we look at the relationship, what I brought up last week was two circular magnets. We know that these magnets are physical, but there's some kind of force that is acting upon them that we can't see, but we can certainly feel it. So you understand that science does not recognize feeling. So this is one of the limitations that science has. So thank God that, we're all plasma scientists and we can do this, without a lab or massive expense. Just take these two magnets and you try and pull them apart, and you'll find there's a resistive force. And if, depending on the polarity, you try and push them together, they may not go together because there's a resistive force. Wait a second. This sounds like double talk. So let's just put them on a paper towel and put them as close as together as we can, which means that they are opposite poles. And let's see what happens if we flip one pole. Well, boing, they push apart. And they did this automatically. And that we understand, that we call repulsion. But the paper towel still has the bend in it because for some reason they have stopped repelling. So what is that reason for stopping to repel? So this is the point. You have one point, you add a second point, and you connect the two, right? So that is repulsion. But if you have one point and you connect it to another point, that connection is the attraction. So I hope you can all see the difference. Let me talk about seeing and saying seeing is believing. One of the things that's very interesting is to look at rainbows. And so the rainbows are actually a kind of a representation of a point of view. And the rainbows are a manifestation of energy in motion. And so if we're looking at and trying to discuss matter plasma, we can discuss it from the sun's point of view. And we can see that the sun is emitting energy and the earth is absorbing energy, and that there's an interaction of this field. And this interaction of this field is the bright rainbow that you're seeing in the right-hand side of the picture. And you find that the inside is blue, the outside is red. So the inside, and we know the blue is of a higher frequency, but it's on the inside. Interestingly enough, and this is a good day to do these reflections because it is the 4th of July and we have lots to celebrate. We look at the other rainbow and we see it's not as brilliant. It's more faint, and I hope you can see that. But if you look closely at it, we can tell you that the blue is on the outside and the red is on the inside. So it's an exact opposite, but it's there. And then there's a zone in between the two rainbows. So if we can say from the sun's point of view, let's look at the relationship. So the sun's point of view, the stronger feeds the weaker. So we say the antimatter feeds the dark matter and the antimatter feeds the light matter. The dark matter is of a higher energy strength than the light matter. So the dark matter also feeds the light matter. So what we have is a divergence of energy coming from the antimatter towards the dark matter and the light matter. And there's a convergence of energy coming from the dark matter and the antimatter towards the light matter, right? And the in-between is in between. So we find that the rainbow, if we say that the rainbow is in between, we find that on the gravitational side is the ultraviolet, and on the magnetical side is the infrared. And the ultraviolet and the infrared are actually not visible to the naked eye. Well, wait a second, so if seeing is believing, then, how can we believe that this is true? Well, when we look at the spectrum of light, we'll find that funny things happen. So before we get to that, let's just look at it from the Earth's point of view. So the Earth's point of view is between the Earth and the magnetosphere. So with the rainbow, it kind of gives us a physical representation of the edge of the magnetosphere. So the area that we're looking at from the Earth's point of view is between the ground and the first rainbow. So if the Earth is giving, the Earth is the gravitational, the Earth is the antimatter, and the first rainbow then is the light matter. And we know it's the light matter because we can see it. There's lots of brilliant colors. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. So the in-between is the dark matter. Well, on a sunny day, the dark matter is pretty bright, but at night, the dark matter is pretty dark. So, you know, which is it? And so what it is that one is a sun view and one is the Earth view. But in both cases, we can see that the frequency of the blue is higher than the red. And so if the frequency is higher, how high is it? And if the frequency of the red is lower, well, how low can you go? So, you know, basically the lowest you can go is 0. Well, how high can you go? Well, we don't know that answer. So what we usually say, it's infinity. Well, if I am going lower and I'm going to 0, shouldn't that be inside? But from the rainbow, it's saying, wait a second, the higher energy is on the inside. And so if the inside is going towards infinity, So Dino Kraspedon tried to answer these questions. And so we've seen that if we're looking at the magnetical relationship, it comes from the center point, the intersection of the X, Y, and Z axis, and goes outward. So that's your divergence, right? But we find that the higher frequency is on the inside. So now we've opened up a whole can of worms, you see, because when we're looking at the relationships, we take a maggrav, that is your singularity. How many magravs are there? More than one. There's a relationship, that's your duality. But, you know, we generally talk about the Holy Trinity, which is the 3 dimensions. Well, the point is that we are none of these 3 dimensions, because you can't be part of these 3 dimensions and then be an observer of these dimensions. You have to be outside of these dimensions. And to be outside of these dimensions, you can't go back to 0, because the singularity is towards the 0. So how many dimensions are there? So I don't know, but the direction of this dimension is towards infinity. So how many dimensions are there? Well, that's not the discussion. The discussion is which field reference are we working in? What is the context? And so when we look at our history, and it's a great day to do reflection on our history, because the United States is one of the greatest countries in the world. And I can say that because I'm a Canadian and they're my neighbors. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for Americans. They have a constitution, an actual constitution, and a Declaration of Independence, an actual declaration. And they had founding fathers. With a basic ethos in terms of verbalization, which was as close as possible to the ethos of the universe, where you have life and you have liberty, although that has double entendres, and the pursuit of happiness. We all want to be happy, and that's why we have music and we dance and we play around. We have our sports and our entertainment. a good life. And so one of the statements and one of the founding fathers was Benjamin Franklin. And I take my hat off to him because he was a very brilliant man. One of the things he said was that the reason he had such a vision, a clear vision of the strength of humanity and the strength of the Republic and all the good things that go with it, is because he was a very humble man. Yeah, he said that. And I don't know the exact quotation, but basically what he said, that the reason he has the far-sighted vision is because he stands on the shoulder of giants. What does he mean by that? Well, if you're a shorty, and if you're in the land of giants, and you look around, you can't see anything. That's like saying, well, I can't see the forest for the trees. Okay. So one of the things Shorty wants to do is he wants to jump on the shoulder of the giants, right? But if he jumps on the shoulder of the giants, then he's going to be standing above the giants. But if he stands above the giants, and if the rest are all giants, then they're only giants with relationship to him. They're not really giants, they're just relationship to him. He doesn't have to step on the shoulder of a giant. He can simply step on the shoulders of another shorty like him. And if he does that, he can see over the shoulders of the giants. Yeah, because if he can do this, well, so can a caterpillar. A caterpillar could sit on the shoulders of the giants and have the same vision. At least a caterpillar can turn into a butterfly. So they have some skills that we don't have. So the point of this is that there are no giants. We're all equal. So if we are all equal, and the Declaration of Independence is for the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then the only way that you can do that is through equality. So there are no giants. So what is he saying? What he's saying is that he doesn't need to be on the shoulder of the giants to look over the shoulders of the other giants. All he needs to do is step on somebody else. So there are no giants. We're all equal. It's just that some people are more equal than others. So he's only being respectful by saying, I'm going to step on you, but I'm going to say that you're a giant. Because I only need to step on Shorty to look over the heads of the other giants. Because if we're all equal, we're all in the land of the giants. All I need to do is step on Shorty, just a stool, just a little stool, and I'm already taller than the other giants. So this is what it is. And so if that's good for him, well, maybe it's good for me. But the thing is, when you're standing on the Shorty, it's not very secure. So it's much better if you stand on two shoulders. Shall we say, put your legs apart, put your feet apart so that you could stand on two people. That gives you more stability, right? And so now we have shorties and we have giants. But the thing is, these giants are smaller in number. And this is the problem with the self-serving attitude. And we can just keep on going. And I think you see the pattern here. This self-service is at the expense of others. And so wherever you are in this particular matrix, you're always stepping on someone, and someone is stepping on you. And my question is, why do you participate in this stupid system? Because unless you're at the top, you are expendable. But that gives you added vision. And so the rest of us are faced with this vision of others. And this vision not only is the way we operate on this planet today, but it also has to do with our history. And so our vision becomes the point of view of others. It is the vision of others. It's not our vision. Okay. So how can we focus? How can we focus our vision when our focal point is the vision of others? That focal point and our celebration today of the 4th of July is our version of history, where we are humble and step on the shoulders of giants so that we can see, where in reality there are no giants. We're just stepping on the shoulders of mental midgets who can't see the forest for the trees. And so how do we get over this sarcasm? How do we get over this double entendre? How do we convert our focal point? Well, we'll talk about that next week. Let's carry on with this week, because what we're talking about is an inversion. My point is, how can we concentrate on physicality when our physicality is the divergence? This is an oxymoron. You can't focus on a divergence. You can only focus on a focal point. Okay? So this becomes understanding of our point of view and the creation of matter. So the creation of matter is the energy that is liberal and free in the universe, because this is part of life. And this energy is looking for a home, and it creates a force field interaction. That is your Magravh condition, which is a balanced force field of energy, the fundamental of creation. It's our point of view that needs to turn around. And so when we look at light and our understanding of light and how many people want to go towards the light, right? Flies go towards the light. So we want to go towards the light. Are we going towards the light, or are we looking at a reflection? Are we looking at which rainbow are we looking at? And are we looking at the rebound? So when we look at the relationship of light with respect to its source, we talk about the inverse square law, where we have a relationship between distance and intensity, where we double the distance, but we have the intensity. So this is the inverse square law. So what we find with respect to the intensity is actually highest at the source. Therefore, the destination has the lowest intensity. Well, if the source is magnetical and the destination is gravitational, and the gravitational is higher than the magnetical, something's wrong. So we find that the source of light also carries mass. And we found that the speed of light is limited to the range on this planet, but not limited. It is constant, but it's not limited. So there is a soul light and a spirit light and a mind light and an emotion light, and then of course a mass light. And we know that the GANs can produce the light. This is the essence of creating plasma energy out of a maggrav. And this is the fundamental on creation. So with creation, we have the fundamental construct of the neutron, which is the initial fundamental plasma. And the neutron will split up into an electron and a proton relationship. The plasma currency of this relationship is the release of a PM tick. And where is this PM tick going? I don't know. It's going somewhere. I haven't decided. I'm not the one who decides. But when we look at a plasma scan, we see that the energy is flowing in all different directions and all different field strengths, because it all depends on what is the source of this energy. And the source of energy in this particular picture comes from many different sources. So we have a combination, and that's the whole point. So when we see how energy is coming to this planet from the sun, the energy coming from the sun contains many, many different fields of strength. And we know that because we have one planet. And on this planet, we have biodiversity. And so we have energy coming from the sun, and it comes in different strengths, and it comes in different polarities. And then we have no energy coming from the sun. At night, we have the energy coming from the earth, but that's actually not true. The truth of the matter is that there is a convergence of energy coming from the sun, and there is a divergence of energy at the same time coming from the earth. But at night, there is a convergence of energy coming from the earth, and there's a divergence of energy coming from the sun. So based on that basic model, we see that if we have two plasma fields, and they are common, in other words, of the same pole, because of the friction through the field rotation, it's part and parcel of ray creation. And this ray creation, of course, is magnetical, and as we can see, it's a divergence. Same as if you would happen if you were sharpening a knife on a grinding wheel. You see how the sparks are flying all over the place. And so the rotation is the x-axis, and the ray creation is magnetical aspect of friction, right? And so this is also, we understand, in the small m matter state. But when we get into the plasma state, this magnetical ray is looking to go somewhere. And if it's going somewhere, it is looking for its gravitational. If it's looking for its gravitational, then that is convergence. So to understand the difference between the matter state friction and the plasma friction is to understand the difference between the magnetical and the gravitational, to understand the difference between the divergence and the convergence, and then to understand that there are different dimensions. So if we have a divergence or a ray creation from an interaction of field rotation, we also have an emission from the relationship between the north and south pole on the y-axis. And then depending on which range we're operating in, so within that range, we can operate at different plasma states. And then depending on which dimension we're operating in, and each dimension has a range, then we are saying that this energy is being emitted and it is converging somewhere at light speed. And we're not saying which speed of light, because we're not saying which dimension, and we're not saying which range within that dimension. Let's just understand something. We talked about how flux lines go around this Earth. We know that the flux lines go around because we see that when we sprinkle iron filings over a magnet, we can actually see these flux lines, right? And so we understand that a tangent line is drawn at some point to contact, where a straight line contacts the curvature of the Earth, and then directly perpendicular from that contact point, which is what we call a right angle, which is 90 degrees to the tangent. On that perpendicular thing, that's in your singularity. But if we have two where we have a relationship, then we find that there are two tangent lines that have a relationship that is changing as we go through the range, as we go from the ground to the sky. And so we find that there's a divergence at the sky and a convergence at the ground. And so we kind of walk on the ground, but we fly in planes and rockets in the sky. And this is how we move around. And this is how we travel in the different ranges on this planet. And so we have the capability of going through the range of the Earth, but our range is actually on the soul level, and it's gravitational. And our relationship with the Earth is magnetical. So that's why we can transcend these various ranges. Now, the plants, on the other hand, they are anchored to the Earth. So to them, the Earth is sort of gravitational, and their roots are gravitational, but their flowers are magnetical. So they kind of work differently from the way we do, but not totally. So they are vertical people, we're part of the horizontal people. And so what we're finding is that this light intensity, this divergence, is not related to acceleration, because acceleration, as we discussed last week, involves direction. And we find that divergence and intensity is not directional. So it doesn't matter which way we turn the flashlight, the energy is still diverting. And we know that from the source has the highest intensity. So the weakest intensity is away from it, and that's the magnetical. So the source is the gravitational, right? So as far as the Earth is concerned, and as far as our relationship to the Earth, we are on top of the Earth and we can move around. And so we are gravitational and giving magnetically. And we know that because when we go to sleep at night, we like to dream, and we're attached to our soul. So our soul knows how to get back to the body, but the body is magnetical, the soul is gravitational. And so what we're talking about in overall is the transcendence of the soul. And when we talk about the transcendence of the soul, we're talking about the elevation of the field strength. The elevation of the field strength is towards infinity. The magnetical ends up going towards the 0 point. So when we look at gravity, we see that as a perpendicular force and how it interacts with the flux lines on this Earth. So we know that a rock is very heavy. And so what happens when we pick up this rock, what happens is that these flux lines are going through the rock, and these flux lines are seeking density. And so we know that the rock is more dense than the air underneath the rock, in between the rock and the earth. And so the stretching of these flux lines is causing an apparent movement. And these flux lines are choosing by density. So we're saying the density has direction. And if you've ever been between a rock and a hard place, you know that that can hurt, because if we let the rock go, it'll come right back down to earth. And it'll even make a dimple in the earth, right? And so this is the slingshot effect. And so where is it going? Well, it's going towards the center of the earth. And we interpret that as gravity. And is that gravity just at that point? So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where on earth you are. All lines point towards the center. So as you get towards the center, you're getting towards the 0 point. Well, wait a second. Wait a second. The blue is on the inside of the rainbow, and the blue is of the higher frequency. And the highest frequency is going towards infinity. How can we go towards the 0 point and then go towards the point of infinity? So it's not the end point. What it is that the density is representative of the convergence. So the intensity is representative of the divergence, and the density is representative of the convergence. And if you like music and you like science, let's put the guitar string theory to work. Your finger is plasmatic. The sound on the guitar is physical. To make that music, we have to step down. We play the guitar, right? And when you press on a fret on a guitar, that changes the frequency. And then when you stretch that string, that raises the frequency. And then if you let that thing go, it'll come back to its original position gravitationally. So we can change the strength of the frequency, the strength of the intensity, by stretching the string or just by moving our fingers along the frets. Okay, so that is a plasmatic relationship in a physical state. And so what we've been talking about in terms of basics is we've been going from the atomic state, which involves the chains of man, going to the monatomic state, which is more in the plasmatic condition. And now we're looking at the GANs of man, which has a different interaction, a different plasmatic interaction, which we're trying to figure out what is the connection between our divergence and our convergence. What is the difference between our gravitational and magnetical, and why are we having this trouble understanding our point of view? And that's what it is our point of view. And who is determining this point of view? So let's understand that we are all equal. We all have a soul. And we are all universal travelers. And so when we set out a map of how we can travel plasmatically on this planet, we see that there's a relationship to the different energy states and a relationship to the energy transfer states. And we recognize the transfer states as heat and electricity or nuclear physics. Well, now we understand that there's a plasma physics, but how does that plasma physics relate to us? And so we find that there's different transcendences that we have to take into account. So when we try and looking at how we see things, do we see things the way other people see things? And if we see things the way other people see things, then we would have to see the individual point of view of each and every member. And each and every member has his point of view. It's not our view, it's their view. And so that becomes a point. Well, how can we see clearly when that focal point is their focal point? And so now we understand how our eye movement is also working and why we've gotten ourselves into trouble. You see, because our eyes move digitally. In other words, they will look, move, and so on. So what we have to do is interpret the in-between. And this in-between is what we call the blur fill. So the interpretation of the reality is the blur fill between the points. And it is from these points that we have a conversion of our understanding of what is reality. The Earth doesn't have this problem. The Earth has already solved the problem. It is here. It was here before us. It has a magnetical gravitational field through the poles. It has a magnetical gravitational fields from the sun, from the source of from the ground to the sky. And it has a magnetical gravitational relationship with the sun and the other planets, but it always is maintaining its balanced position, and thank God for that. And so our problem here is we're trying to understand, well, if we have two different forces and we're having a little game and we're trying to figure out in our little game of tic-tac-toe, which is really basically only in 2 dimensions. So that's our first problem. And the second problem is we don't know whose turn it is because we don't have a basis of a relationship. So we need to move away from singularity, which is the creation of a Magravity condition, which is the balance between the magnetical and the gravitational. And by changing its position with respect to its polarity, we can now create a condition in this environment to attract another. And so this is the beginning of duality. And then we do it again, and then we come to the Trinity. But, you know, do we need to continue in that direction? No, we can go in other directions. And so we have the X and the Y axis, and then we have the Z axis. And now we've opened up a whole can of worms, and we're trying to figure out what is the difference between divergence and convergence, and how can we tell this? But the Earth has got it all figured out. So our problem here, when we're discussing plasma science, is our point of view. Are we, are we earthbound or are we spacebound? Here's what we're bound. There's a soul, that you all have a soul, and there's a source, and there's a link. Now, from our soul, are we diverging or are we converging? So this is the thing. When we're, as a Spaceship Institute, looking at outer space, we really have to understand, what are we doing? And the point is, we're doing both. We're doing both at the same time. And our skill set in understanding this is what's missing. And so that's what the whole purpose of all the teachings are, is that we understand the basis. The basis is the magnetical strengths of attraction and repulsion. And when we have a decision, whether it's magnetic or gravitational, we have to understand that the attraction and the repulsion has already been accomplished. That's what we call a maggrav. So whether it's magnetical or whether it's gravitational is over and above the maggrav condition. In other words, the magnetical is the maggrav plus the magnetical condition, or the gravitational condition is the maggrav plus the gravitational condition. So the magnetical and gravitational are the residue. And then our interaction with that residue is dependent on whether we are converging or diverging. So we can now say that there's an attraction, which is gravitational, and so it's converging energy. There's a repulsion, this is magnetical, and it's diverging energy. And these things are always working in balance. So where is our lack of understanding? The lack of understanding comes in to the interaction when you look at these cups of life, and I must reinforce, these are not the cups of the pandemic, they are the cups of life. And so you have two mag-grav fields, and there's an interaction between these two mag-grav fields, or a relationship between these two mag-grav fields. And this is a thing that we have to understand better and explain better. And more importantly, we need to incorporate this in our life, because we're not taking enough into account. So I repeat, it's very important for each of us to have a cup. We see what we've been talking about, a zinc plate and a copper coil in matter state, and a nano-coated copper coil already in a higher energy state. And it creates a magnetical field. It creates a gravitational field. And so there's an interaction, a plasmatic interaction that is going on inside, and not only in one direction, and not only between the neighbor. And now we introduce GANs. Now we have another plasmatic field. Which dimension is that in? Okay, so we find that that is coming from, shall we say, the sky. And we have the zinc GANs and the copper GANs, and that produces a CO2 GANs. And then that invites the amino acid. And thank God that oil and water don't mix, because that's how we can create our little spaceship. And so we find when we create the amino acid, we also create water. But what gives us the rigidity is the ability to have a skeleton. But we find that the source of this skeletal material is in each and every cell. So we actually have another GANs that is being produced in there. So you can see it's quite jam-packed, quite sophisticated, a lot more than the average person would consider. And by changing just the zinc plate for a copper plate, we change the structure. We don't change the plasmatic reaction, right? It's a universal energy, magnetical gravitational field. It's only when we put a relationship of two magravs together that we can decide if one is emotional and one is physical. And so we say the one with the zinc is emotional, the one with the copper is physical, and there's a relationship to our bodies. And so this is very helpful to understand, but both cups create this field. And if we have a purpose for these cups, and that is to eradicate the virus, then we need to keep them a meter apart, because there's an emotional construct and there is a physical construct. And then that construct gets stronger by the introduction of an individual magnetical and gravitational field. So the virus has got all this figured out. There's no problem there. But the thing is that something is always something as opposed to something else. So what we're trying to do is, there's energy in motion. So let's deplete the energy from the virus and let's convert it. Let's convert it to something else. Maybe convert it to food. So everything is a relationship, and this is where we're at. Basically, to create a mag-grav balance condition between the magnetical and gravitational forces. And we see the limitations of the scientific and the limitations of the spiritual. By adding those together, we can get a whole picture. And so the way we manifest in our bodies is the same way that matter is manifest. It's just as a question of what dimension. And so all of this has to do with the conversion of light. And our soul is heavily involved, you see, because when we bring the two together in the cups of man, we are not just emotional, physical beings, which give us a gravitational taking and a magnetical giving, but we also become a maggrav condition with a gravitational point in a center. And then that becomes the home for our soul. And then we find that each and every cup also has a soul. And the collection of all the souls of all the three cups give us a maggrav condition with a magnetical field, a gravitational field, and a soul field, and the soul field at the center. And so you try and explain to someone in 35 seconds, oh, what is this plasma? You know, and you just tell them it's a kind of energy state and it's pretty important. And this is how the universe works, you see. So when we're looking at the ethos of the universe, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. God bless America.
That sounded like a very big coffee cup you had there.
What we're looking for on this planet is a plasma satisfaction, which involves the restoration of the emotional and physical vitality. When we understand how the universe is created, and then when we understand that energy is always in motion, and then we understand that all things working in combination, interdependence. Think about it. You provide the pattern, you get the energy. The gift of life is the ability to give and take energy. It is part of creation, co-creation, and procreation, all three. This is the progression of creation. We call it growth. Some people want to know, is this divergence or is this convergence? Here's the point. We emit what we are and we absorb what we are, and we're able to do this at light speed. So our perception of history is another barrier that we have to throw on the heap. We don't have to stand on the shoulders of giants, and giants don't need to tell us what the history is. There is a perception of history, and that perception of history is a perception of reality. And neither one of these has to do with the manifestation of reality. The manifestation of reality is when two fields come together to form another, and the formation of any field is a manifestation, but the plasma feeding is what leads to this manifestation. That's why the manifestation could be non-tangible or tangible, could be non-visible or visible, could be plasmatic or physical, and therefore could be dark matter or light matter. So there is a plasmatic reality and a physical reality. The perception of reality is an imagination. It is not a form artifact of reality. It is an artificial form artifact. Manifestation is a form artifact, and our emotion of presence is a form artifact of energy in motion. And this gives us a basis and a grounding to discuss further, because we are the messengers of peace and friendship. And what does that mean? The Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute is a spaceship organization putting this information into public domain because the World Peace Treaty is essential. Plasma energy will not work otherwise. Physical and emotional harmony and vitality is essential to maintaining world peace. So on this July the 4th, remember, that when knowledge seekers become truth seekers, the truth is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And can we all make a difference? This is the dynamic plasma language throughout the universe, and that's why plasma science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on earth. Happy birthday, America. Over to you, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alex. I thought maybe you took that coffee cup from one of the giants. It sounded like a big cup, or maybe that was your hand hitting the table. I wasn't sure. If you could, would you be able to go back to the plate with the rays on it that you were showing us earlier? Now, I understand the rays are like a cloud in a way, or a collection of fields that have directional movement, but they don't have any rotational movement. Now, previously, you mentioned something about the rays, they couldn't interact unless they hit each other at a right angle. Did I misunderstand you? In other words, I know you were referring to, no, not that one, the one with the lines, and you said that the rays are coming in all directions. And they weren't just coming in straight lines or something. I thought maybe you'd see that. Not that one. It was earlier in the presentation, I think, but maybe some, there it is. Now, you said they don't all come in like this way. They're coming in from all directions. But at one point in the past, maybe not today, but you said they couldn't interact with each other. And I know you referred to Dino, the Brazilian mathematician, and you said they had to interact at right angles. Am I misunderstanding you or what you were saying? That I picture these as a cloud of fields, and that they do have directional motion, but they don't have any rotational motion until they become a plasma or interact. Am I wrong?
No, what I'm saying is that with respect to conventional science, we're looking at the basic 3 dimensions of the X, Y, and Z axis. And so by being observers of this, we're none of these 3 dimensions. And so these rays, when you see them, we only see them as 1-dimensional. And we don't see them as 3-dimensional until they themselves interact with each other and create a magnetic field. But in order for them to maintain a construct, they have to have a plasmatic field. And so that construct of that basic plasma field is the combination of the antimatter, dark matter, and matter. Right? The construct of that field has to have those components. So that energy is always positive. It's where it's going, and the direction that it's going is the charge. And the relationship of the charge is based on the interaction of different plasmatic fields. The interaction of these plasmatic fields and the direction of flow is based on field strength. Our problem with the plasma science is the dimension. So if we say that if we look at the earth as a coin, I would say the energy comes in from one side, goes around and goes out the other side, that's only 2 dimensions. That's like a coin on a table. It's flat. The earth is not flat. The earth is round. If you take a coin and you put it on its edge and then you spin it, because of the way your eye moves. Your eye moves digitally. The image that your mind interprets is the blur field between the digital points. And so what you see is a rotation. So you're looking at a flat coin spinning and it looks round.
I agree.
So what we have to do is to understand that these are lessons in life and these are lessons for learning. And the rules are the same in all the dimensions. But when we keep interpreting these rules incorrectly, and we write a new set of rules and say, well, we're not going to write the rules based on what's going on. We're going to write the rules based on our interpretation. Well, as a student, I have no choice. If my teacher is teaching that, I have to learn those rules. So what we're teaching is differently. We're teaching the basics. We're teaching the awareness. And then you check out the theories, and you only need to disprove a theory once to make it collapse. And out of over, how many knowledge seekers workshops are we at now? There is a consistency. And the only way that you can maintain this consistency is through truth. That is the only way, because you cannot manufacture lies and be consistent in all different directions. You will be found out. So if the lie is only between me and you, well, nobody knows. Right there is the problem. Right there is the lie. When you say nobody knows, well, you know. You're the one who made the lie. Oh, I get it. You're a nobody. That's right. You don't matter. You've just rendered yourself to being one of the mental midgets that the giants step on. You're the shoulder that supports the other. That's not the way the universe works. That's the way our society works on this planet. But this is a house of cards that's ready to fall down. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because you can't maintain this house of cards and maintain life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and the physical and emotional balance and physical and emotional vitality. You can't maintain that.
Alrighty. So if we were to go to your plate with the neutron, where you were showing it splitting into the proton and the electron. Now, all along, the neutron is giving and taking, or taking and giving, correct?
Correct.
And for it to produce an electron and proton, it has to take a lot more, doesn't it? And then it produces the proton in the electron. I know it's constantly, let's say, giving and taking, okay? But at some point, I would think to split off an electron and a proton, it has to take a lot. And then it's like pregnant, so it has to split.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what does that tell you? That tells you that the neutron can change in field strength.
So it's giving and taking all along, right?
Right, yeah.
It's interacting or giving and taking, but then it has to accumulate quite a bit of strength to produce it. It has to take a lot of energy.
But still retain itself at that energy state.
Right. So it's the same as what it produces. So it took in a lot of energy and then gives off the electron and the proton, or the proton and the electron. And it's still the same structure, and the proton and electron is still the same field strength as the original neutron.
Well, Yes, except for three possibilities.
Okay.
You can add energy, you can subtract energy, or you can convert energy.
Within itself or from the outside?
All things are in relationship. So you can create an electron and a proton from a neutron, but the neutron will be sacrificed in the process. Will the element that holds the neutron be sacrificed in the process? Depends on how many neutrons are in the element. The more neutrons, the more stable it is. So the element to create the electron-proton combination, will it disintegrate? Will it reduce? Or will it increase? Will it transform? These are all dependent on the environment. I don't know the answer, okay?
Okay.
Because it all depends. The more complex it is, the more stable it is. However, the problem with plasma is that it hits a certain dimension point, at which point it is no longer physical. And we see that point is somewhere. We know that GANS is physical, right? But we also know that GANS has an affinity for carrying emotion, and emotion is not physical. So is the GANS emotional or is it physical?
Well, it's been referred to as the fourth state of matter.
Okay, so now you understand that we're not taking enough into account. We are only talking about the simplicity of divergence and convergence. And we're only looking at the basic dimensions. This is why we have to leave the physicality behind. We don't take from the physicality to grow into the plasma state. The plasma state is what builds the physicality. So if we can understand that our creation comes from the plasma, not the other way around. Everything that I'm trying to do, and I can only do it within my capability, just like every teacher, is to relate it to the physical science and to demonstrate the limitations, because as we get into the plasma, these limitations break down. You cannot have these limitations. The plasma doesn't have limitations. That's what we're trying to show. And so
I think Alex, here it goes to decay only when you break the interlock between the two.
this particular model will decay for sure, but this particular model is a part of another. So if it isn't a complex element, this particular decay constitutes the magnetical force without the sacrifice of the element. But if this is the element, then this entire element becomes sacrificed from its basic structure.
No, the answer, I mean, the answer to your question, if is it giving to take or give to be in decay process, it is all that you break the interlock between the two.
Yeah, that's correct.
Good, the first time I am correct.
No, that's not the first time, buddy. That's not the first time. You have we all understand on a different way, and that's what is nice. Okay, so you understand that we have physicality, we have emotion, we have a soul, and so that's 3 dimensions. But we have 7 billion people on this planet, and each person has over 70 trillion cells, and each of them functions exactly the same way. So how do we get this diversity and this complexity from this simple model of ray creation here? And so this is, we have the skills to be able to imagine all of this going on. And we don't have a better teacher than the vertical people on this planet, because they are showing us the diversity. How many plants do we have on this planet? How many insects do we have? How many different animals do we have on this planet? So this is the biodiversity of this planet. So we are just not taking enough into account, and we are trying to make things as simple as possible because we're looking at a one-to-one relationship. You give me the money, you know, and I'll give you the goods. And that's not the way the universe works. There's an interaction on all different directions.
And the planet's still in the creation process. I know Mr. Kesh said that the scientists, or they discover an animal in the wild and they think it's something that was lost for 1 million years and we just discovered it. But the planet could have just created it out of the fields 2 weeks ago. And we're saying it's some lost thing that's been here for a long time.
Okay, so what does that do to the School of Biology?
It gives it unlimited possibilities.
Well, there's a lot of things that we learned in the School of Biology that was limiting possibilities.
But I just had always thought that it was true, that this was something that we had just never discovered. But the planet is still in the creation process.
Yeah, but Mark, when you're discussing biology, you're discussing a hierarchy of beings, right? Just like in our society, we discuss a hierarchy. You know, we have lowlifes and we have giants, right? We have great people and we have not so great people. This is the point. There is an equality in the universe. This is a universal equality. This is the point that we're missing. We are all equal. There's no, you know, euphemistic or comical, some are more equal than others. We all have different talents and capabilities, but, you know, I don't have the capability, you know, throw me in the dirt and you know, watch me grow. But I could throw a seed into the dirt and, you know, in a couple of years, it's going to turn into a tree.
Alex,
Yes, sir.
you know what we are missing here in this teachings?
Yeah, I do, but I'm going to listen to you.
We are missing the creation of Earth due to the position of the solar system.
Bingo.
We are in Earth, but actually a lot of knowledge seekers do not understand or comprehend how Earth exists and how the humans exist in this position of the creation of Earth.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bingo.
you.
Bingo.
The earth is manifestation by the center of the sun and boundary of the sun in the certain position, we like entity, human being, let's say, or vertical people or horizontal people, we are also manifestation of inner core of the earth and boundary of the earth, surface of the earth, in plasmatic field talking about. Or it's our boundary or our soul.
You know, the problem with the humanity, always referring to their reference. So always we need to understand what is the beginning and who created the beginning. And this is the problem. They not look, they want to see, to understand the history and to see the future, but do not see the present, where they are standing. So I think, Alex, if it's a request, next teaching, that will be the topic. How, in reality, how Earth created. And I think it will be very beautiful for the knowledge seeker to understand.
What do you think, Jalal? Is this okay?
Thank you very much, Mr. Alex. It was lovely, your teaching, as usual. Thank you very much. And we have inertia next, or conversion and after inertia. And inertia is related to physicality, how physicality was created by the reduction of these fields. Today is 4th July, and it was discovered the boson Higgs, who created matter in this science, actual science, I mean, in 2012, if I remember well, for July. And Jalal just asked about how was created our planet in relation with the sun, and yeah, nothing. It's I think that it's correct what Jalal suggested, and I will be very happy to hear and maybe in comparison, if it's possible, with the actual science, how they said that mass was created by this Higgs boson field, and this big boson, which doesn't have any spin is 0, and this boson, who is like a superconductor. Anyway, if somebody could do it, will be great, because we have to understand what actual science is saying, in order to add to this actual knowledge. Don't be so much in contradiction, and to create harmony between knowledge. Plasma is science of harmony, of equilibrium, even at the knowledge between science and theology, and between communities, between individuals inside in our inner self. And thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else would like to? Alex, would you take more questions? Or anyone?
I'm present, so conversation can go any direction that the knowledge seekers wish.
I have a question for Alex. I'd like to know what song you played on your guitar when you made all them gingerbread men today.
Well, one of the problems is when you eat them, you have to sing, "Who's sorry now?"
And if everything is in balance, is there any creation happening? I thought the creator was created out of an imbalance of fields. That started the process of creating the creator. Now, the mother of the creators, that might be different. But the creator came from an imbalance of the fields, as I understand it.
If you want to pull the creator leg, I don't think you'll succeed in this matter.
No, I'm not trying to pull the creator's legs. He knows
Yeah,
exactly
that
what he's
is so
doing.
funny.
Alex, if you allow me, because I promised to ask Jalal, if the private teaching is public teaching.
Again, please. I didn't hear.
I think he means when you were teaching in the Brazilian, was it Wednesday? This past week?
Yeah,
Was that a public or a private teaching?
no, that was public teaching.
Okay. Was that it, Dan?
Yes, thank you.
I think it's published. Yes. Wait a minute. Let me see. I think
Somebody said it was on YouTube.
Yeah,
in our
it
earlier
is.
meeting, someone posted it in the YouTube.
Yeah, it is there. I can post it here. Just 1 second.
And that just came from one of Liana, one of Mr. Kesh's teachings, or I read it in the book, but I think it was from Mr. Kesh's teaching about the creation of the creator. Came from an imbalance of the fields. That started the creation process. But as far as the mother of the mother of the mother of the creators, that might be different in a different dimension, in a different universe, in a different strength. Jalal, your mic is open, but we're not hearing you. You must have walked, if you're on a wireless, you might have walked out of range.
He's
No.
searching in YouTube the link for the
Yeah, I am.
thing.
Yeah. Okay. I will post it here. Anyone you like.
So while it's doing that, I'd like to emphasize, Mark, that if the higher strength is in the gravitational side, and the higher strength is pushing towards infinity. And the convergence is pointing to the center. Then the center, in order to be infinity, has to change a dimension. Does that make sense?
I have to think about that. Can you restate that one more time?
So if you're on the outside and then you're converging towards the center, the gravitational point, the gravitational core.
I'm getting pulled towards the center.
Yep. But you can't stop. Where are you going to go?
Right out the other side, whatever angle.
No, you
I
can't.
come in.
No, you can't, because these are all one-way streets. All of them are converging towards the center. So what are you going to do? What you going to do when they're all bearing down on you?
Well, I was thinking if I'm not the same field strength as the center, then I would pass right through. But if I can interact with the center, maybe I would stay.
You can't stay.
I was always under the impression, Alex, that when the gravitational fields come into the center, they change to magnetical.
Yes.
So I guess I don't understand the import of your question. I don't know. I thought
Well,
that's
yeah, but it can't. It has to go into a different dimension.
a different field strength.
So is that a new universe?
No, it stays within the same construct, because we are able to do that all on this planet. You're able to make GANs on this planet. You're also able to cut wood on this planet. And you're also able to, love your spouse or love your children. So these are all different field strengths, and they're all on this planet. So we are capable of doing all of these field strengths on this planet at the same time. So when you're converging that energy, then you have to go somewhere into a different energy state. If you say to your spouse, I love you, don't you think that they would smile? So that's a conversion of that energy into a physical smile. Or if a coach says to a soccer player, don't go to the left, go to the right, please. You're giving a verbal instruction. It manifests itself into physicality. The player does that. What do the other players do? They reposition themselves. You only talk to the one player, the rest of the players reposition themselves. Who told them to do that? Where did they get that instruction from? So each of them is operating on all of these levels. You see, the limiting factor is the elimination of the universal ethos. So when we look at the minimalistic point of view of physical science, then we try and break things down. So this is one of the reasons that we're trying to make new scientific discoveries by crashing things. The universe, look, the universe is well organized. You ever see a flock of birds? They don't crash into each other. Did you ever see a herd of elephants? Can you imagine them crashing into each other? What a mess that would be. How about a herd of buffalo? History tells us that when the settlers came into North America, the plains were teeming with buffaloes, and that they would, when they would run in a stampede, thousands of buffaloes would run. Same thing still happens with elk in northern Canada. There's nothing to have 30,000 elk in a herd. They all run together as one. They don't go crashing into each other. It's only us who like to go to a show where cars crash into each other. We call that a demolition derby, and it's a lot of fun. And that's entertainment, and that's okay. But when we take a demolition derby and apply that to our society, that's not fun, that's stupidity. And history, I don't care who writes the history, shows the perpetuation of this stupidity. And we're supposed to be advanced human beings. We've got a long way to go to catch up to the vertical people, and we should learn from them. They're teaching us. This is what I say, when the army tramples through the flower garden and the next day the army is gone, the flowers will start to grow again. Now, they may not be the straightest flowers. They may have a lot of physical damage, but they will grow again. And they will correct themselves because they understand the universal principle of energy and motion.
I think John had his mic open for a moment. John?
Nobody can escape you, yeah. When Alex said, what are we gonna do? I said, what are we gonna do with a drunken sailor? I suppose you've sung that at school, haven't you?
Yes, we have. So you understand that when they talk about the birth of a nation, this is a nautical term. And when they talk about liberty, this is a nautical term. So when we look at our history and we see the influence of the naval rules, these rules have nothing to do with the universal order of creation of matter.
And that's an interesting observation by Dan. It's very pleasant to note that at least 16 members of the Universal Council are now present here. You know, I was thinking about Marie, and she's been joining us periodically on Sundays or pretty regularly. And I was thinking, well, she might be on a picnic today because it's a holiday or, you know, something else. And then within 2 seconds, I was thinking, I wish she was here. And then within about 2 seconds, all of a sudden I see Marie waiting to come in. So I thought that was very nice. And I sent her a little note on that. I don't know if I communicated with her through the soul or through the fields or what I was saying.
I have a question for Marie.
Yes, go right ahead. Marie?
I'm here. I'm here. Thank you for your communication with me, Mark. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Marie. We love your classes. And as a Canadian, we don't know much about what's going on in the international community. And I was so alarmed to hear about the restrictions that you have in Norway. And I was wondering if there's anything that you can talk about there that would be comfortable with respect to how things are going on in Norway.
What restrictions are you referring to?
Well, it has to do with the discussion, I guess, in general terms of the plasma science. Again, as I say, I'm ignorant of this. What I heard was that there was a lot of pressure on the knowledge seekers in Norway to disband, I guess, or are you?
Yeah. I know that case. It was some knowledge seekers from Norway who went out and talked about healing, or that the plasma can do a lot for the body, and even cure things, and that didn't the governments didn't like that, so they made a lot of problems, because there are very, very strict rules on health in Norway, so we have to obey the rules in a way.
So you were talking about medical claims as opposed to just general knowledge?
Yeah, it's especially within the health department.
Yeah,
It's
those,
very strict, and you cannot write anything, or you cannot say anything without getting in legal trouble with the government. So as long as we know that, we just have to bring the plasma technology forward in other areas, I think. I think that's the solution.
yes, those two words, healing and cure, are usually not accepted in the mainstream. So as knowledge seekers, we should use balancing or processing in place probably of that.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we need to do here in Norway is to get the technology out, so people can see all the solutions that are within the technology, and then they will see that it's also good for the health in a way. So, but well, not selling, not talking about curing or anything like that. I don't know how it is in other countries, but I'm very aware of that here.
So without divulging too much, Marie, how was the Norwegian community progressing with respect to the foundation? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I can comment on that. We don't have a very active community, but there are people dropping in once in a while, and some have been in the Keshe Foundation before, or a long time ago, and they come back, but it's not very active actually. But so there is a lot of things that can be done. So I'm thinking about how to do that.
It is a little bit cold
to create here. It's very hot now during summer.
No, I am saying because they are not. I am saying because they are not interacted with this knowledge. It is a little bit cold.
And I happen to be reading something about Norway, and I thought of you, Marie, which said they sent all their vaccinations to Africa instead of using them with their own population. So they must know something.
Yeah, there's a lot of fuss. There is a lot of fuss about that, because the vaccines that are sent to Africa is not suitable for the Norwegians. So how can they be suitable for the Africans? So it's like a ethical question about that. But you know how the world is. I guess the Africans don't want them anyway.
And then
Can
I
you
was,
hear me?
yes, yes. Then I was reading something else. And again, we don't know if these things are true or just articles or false information. You know, they were saying in the United States military, there's 70% apparently that have taken it. And the white people, they said, got the Pfizer and everyone else got the Modernas. So that's very strange to think why that was going on. Very interesting. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But it was written that way. And of course, here you can basically write anything you want. It's like being on the floor of the House or the Senate and just make up any sort of stories as if they were true.
You mean regardless of,
Facts, yeah.
or regardless of your oath?
Yes, when you're in debate, you can sort of embellish on the truth, so to speak.
I said I wasn't going to make any comments.
And I'll be glad when Alex will be able to say what he feels and Marie will be able to say what she feels as well, openly. And that time is coming rather quickly.
Yeah, I hope so. And about this vaccination thing, I don't know how, I think we are very misinformed from the press. So I don't know how many people actually has taken this, because I think there is a lot of resistance. And the longer time it goes, the more resistance against this vaccine, because they see the horrible effects for some people. I don't know.
Yeah, we probably should leave that subject for now, rather than get into our
maybe we should.
speculations and observations so much. That way no one will bother our recording.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the way it seems to be going. It's either our way or the highway. So you either espouse the official narrative or you're gone.
I can say something that I've been working on lately is to try to get this solution for CO2 catch. Is that right to say? With all this global warming and all these Paris Accords and things like that, it's a lot of focus on the climate. And the Keshe Foundation has a very simple solution for that, and a very good scientific report that is actually in book number 2, if you have it. So I've been looking at that, and I'm planning to try to find a way to approach the government. And I found somewhere where they say that you can send in or contact them if you have a solution, because they are looking for new solutions.
And it's so nice to see that a gas creates a nano of itself and then appears as a solid in a matter state when you use the CO2 box. It's beautiful.
And it's also the way a leaf catches CO2 from the air and returns oxygen and carbon. So it's very understandable for people, I think, who are not into plasma technology.
Good evening. If you need such a document, there is a group set up under the name or banner of KFCO2, One Nation Challenge Team, which is drawing up such a document. It's part of the KF program and is handled by Jim and Lisa. You can join that group and get a lot of documents from them. Raphael is part of that group too. So if you need any help, they are setting this thing up, or they're supposed to set up documents for this to give you some support.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kesh.
If you want, I can add you into that group.
Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Just let me, where do I find you?
Good day, Mr. Kesh. I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much for being here. And I would really like to, on this American birthday, if I was wondering how things are presenting themselves for the future.
Can I just ask, sorry about that, I don't have you on my list, I don't know why, but I asked Ella to add you to this group, the KFCO2 One Nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Alex.
No problem at all. As this is the 4th of July, it's a very important day in the United States, day of reflection. And I was just wondering if we have a vision of the future that you might be able to comment on.
You want to look into the crystal ball, you mean?
Yeah, I want to stand on someone's shoulders.
You know, as many people do not know or might know, or historically, your 4th of July celebration, actually the agreement for freedom, or what do you call it, the what do you call restricted freedom, was done with the help of the Russians in the city of Ghent in Belgium. The final draft of the 4th of July, what you call now. And if you read the details of this, British are still the owner of United States. They have given you the freedom of election, but you're still part of the British colony. Russians could not get United States off their hand or give them the freedom. The blacks are free. They've been given the freedom. But the white Americans under the, what you call it, the 4th of July Constitution, are still colony of United Kingdom. You still have the Queen as head of your nation. You still have presidential, you still have everything else, but in the background, in the agreement, British never gave the freedom to the Americans. And You see this in a lot of cases. So when you speak about what you see in the future, 4th of July, I look at it, you'd be better negotiate with Buckingham Palace than the White House, if you understand what I mean. You see good things. You see a lot of good things. And there's a piece of information which maybe some of you who live around Buckingham Palace might be interested to know. If you go towards the city in London, there is a Temple of Mitra right in the center of London. And you can actually go to the Temple of Mitra. It's under the building known as a Bloomberg building. You can go and see the Roman soldiers brought it, made the temple. This is one of many temples around London which are hidden. So Mithraism has even been practiced in England. And part of the British monarchy rules, and then with the Romans, it still carries part of the teaching and the work of the Romans when they brought it to England. This is about 7-10 meters below the ground. It's been carved out and everything is there. You can go and see it. What we see, you ask me the future, we see the negotiations of peace starting, and we see a conclusion to a lot of works towards the science and technology. We enter peace in that way. Part of our negotiation with the Americans is Iranian technology and knowledge in exchange for peace, but peace will be on the international level, not on the one nation between Iran and US. And we see the framework of it. And then by 2022, we'll see a lot of changes. Because the motto or logo which Biden came into power was new technology, new sciences. And we give that as a gift in exchange for a peace. But in a way, we do not much care. We exchange the technologies for them to find peace with themselves. And you will see in the opening of the space technology, the true way in the coming weeks. Before end of this year, we will see a change, and there is no stamina for wars anymore, and we cannot pull. And in so many ways, too many people have received too many vaccines to worry about too many things than wars at the moment. But in general, from where we see a beginning of the world peace talks and actions. We might see a bit rough times, but in general, peace negotiations will start shortly in a beautiful way. But with it will come the opening of the space technology. The biggest problem, some of this microphone is open. The biggest problem for most of the nations is how to find a way to be working towards the betterment of the citizens and how we can sell this. And this is the biggest problem. And we will see a huge resistance, especially from Western Europe and US, in allowing the new technology, even though they wanted to allow it to. We'll see a change of direction with a new leader of Germany coming to power in the next couple of months. And consequently a lot of changes in European decision making. And it will bring us a lot of horrible times in trying to get the Europeans and the Americans accepting the new technology, especially the new space technology, as will allow many third world nation, Africans and the rest, to have access, immediate access to the Western world, traveling from different part of the world within minutes into anywhere they like. Even though they want the new technology, on the other hand, they don't want the new technology because borders become meaningless and all the effort they made and all the injustices will go into balance box. Trump wanted to build a wall. Now the Mexicans don't need America to jump into Canada. It just takes them a minute. They're over US into Canada. And if you are in, I mean, your report release or this program is coming out of North America and Canada, if you're now going to the airports of Toronto and the rest of the airports around Canada, you see nothing but plane loads of Mexicans coming in for 3 months, 6 months slavery work, for harvesting, but the money they get paid, feed them for next 8 months, 10 months till the next time. And this will stop. In a way, they don't need permission to take. They'll be there to take. This is one of the biggest problems for Western world in applying the new technology, and one of the resistance we see with it. That high-speed travels without control. Now we have borders. Now we have airports. In next 12 months, if we get our way, and we will do it through the immediate space technology, it's like the olden days. You had the castles with the water around it, nobody could go in. When the cannon came in and when the plane came in, castles became useless. Now with the new space technology and traveling without limitation, borders will go. There are the castles which are falling down. And this will be a biggest dilemma in next few months and years for the new government. Accepting the new technology, how do we control the population movement? And secondly, as we just heard, we don't want the injection, we send it to Africa. The Africans they can come and get it in Denmark and Norway themselves. They don't need you to send it. This is the biggest problem we will see. Colonization coming to an end, but people who've been colonized wanting what they gave over centuries back to themselves. And this is the biggest resistance we've seen from Western world about Keshe Foundation, because we explained this in deep, in thorough way. Now is faced with it, and they will come very soon. Definition of the borders and how we keep everyone fed and everyone looked after. As I said, the castle of borders has gone with the new technology. They want the new technology to create new jobs, but the outcome of new technology is no borders, because you can travel anywhere, work anywhere and go home within minutes. It was hidden, or very nicely hidden, in the Iranian report of 10th of February internally. Travel from Earth to Moon by the Iranian Space Agency within 1 minute. Then you can see what it is. This is what is on the card. And our biggest problem with peace negotiation will be to get the Americans and the Europeans to understand the game is over. Because if we produce in China or India or Iran, the technology will be spread around the world. I said before, to Obama's administration, Biden being the second man in charge, will have people in front of the White House from any corner of Africa, more than you have inside Washington. The technological breakthrough is huge. If you go back about 6 months ago, more than 6 months ago, I announced that Iran will reach 92% enrichment. And the Americans said, dream. Now, officially in the meetings we have announced, we have 60% enrichment, we can reach as much as we like. So we told the Americans, we get 92% enrichment, it didn't come, we have it. But what's the purpose of this enrichment is something which is negotiable on the tables. It's not for nuclear weapon. It will be for the most advanced space technologies man ever seen. You're now preparing for power, we are preparing for space. And this will shock the world in what how advanced Iran is in these technologies.
And if I could add, if people want to see a crystal ball, they can go back to the 331 Knowledge Seekers Workshop. And an Iranian woman, I think in the question and answer session, asked Mr. Kesh's future vision, and he gave about a 10-minute overview. And you'll find that in the 331st Knowledge Seekers Workshop.
Our biggest problem in the coming weeks is not so much nuclear technology of Iran, is what we call advanced technology of Iran. That makes literally nations and borders and all these meaningless. As I said, we were happy we could hide inside the castles. Now we are happy we can put soldiers and hide behind the definition of nation, lions and castles. Now, in the next few months, these become meaningless. Mankind will be forced to peace through the development of new technology. But that peace means to put back, give back a lot to places where we robbed for centuries. No one has been robbed more than the Americans. One day, Americans, today is your Freedom Day, but no one has been robbed more than you lot by the British. While you thought you were robbing, you got robbed. All your soldiers who die in the front line from Vietnam to Iraq and the rest, the oil freeze collected in Iraq goes to the bank of BP. The gold collected in Iraq goes to Buckingham Palace. And Americans lying in the front line in different part of Iraq, but Basra, the oil center, stays solid in the hand of British. They export whatever they like. They don't pay anything to Iraqis, they die of hunger, but the British sell. And this has been what we said many times before. You're still servants to the British monarchy. You don't have a freedom. You haven't been given that freedom. That's why British use America as a moving soldier base wherever they want. Because decisions are made in London. The soldiers move by it. Even if you can look at the Second World War, British paid the Americans for the war, but in the back, all the money was transferred back to England. And the clear way You lost so many soldiers. You look how many British lost. You look where your soldiers are, all the danger zones. British only in the port of Basra, where all 99% of Iraq oil is exported. And no one has any idea of how much is exported. Because British owned them. They took, during the Iraq war, they took control of Basra. And that was the whole plan. So you understand. And all this will come to an end. It won't be an end. It's a good time. A lot of things will change, but Western world will oppose the new technology more than anybody else, because the new technology will bring in or bring down their borders and barriers. And borders and barriers is where they sold arms, where they keep the conflicts going, where they kept the animosities and everything else against others. That they could sell arms. Now they can't sell arms. It's not that it's going to be a beautiful time for technologies like Keshwadish. The Western world will oppose it, as you've seen up to now. Because they know Mexico City, Toronto will be 2 minutes. And Johannesburg and Washington less than a few minutes.
So investing in sightseeing companies is not a good idea.
Investing in what?
Investing in sightseeing companies, you know, have a tour.
Tourism? Oh, now everybody's a tourist. I think the best place is to sell Moon and Mars and Jupiter, if you can say holiday destination.
Yeah, but if they ask you, did you want a window seat? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. You can have 2 window seats.
You're not going to see anything. It'll be instantaneous. It'll be a blur.
Yes, and some of us do see this as the Queen has knighted even our former president, Secretary of Defense, and others. And the reason, one of the reasons you get knighted is for service to the crown. And we also know the ownership of the Federal Reserve, the Class A stock, is mostly with the crown. So not all of us are unaware, but the majority, I would say, is.
You know an old say, they say, or as British say, there'll be 5 queens left in the world. You know that?
I haven't heard that one.
4 in the pack of cards and 1 the Queen of England. You are, it was the Russians through the Tsar, because they were the cousins of the British royal family. When they drew up the contract, they drew it up from the point of British interests or family interest, that you have your 4th of July. And part of it says that it is done, that the British stay, that you are given the freedom to choose your president and collect taxes, but not the ruler of your nation.
Yes, I know that the Tsars helped form the United States as they threatened the British with making war in Europe if they didn't allow the formation of this country. I'm a little bit familiar with those stories.
Yeah, because he was drawn up in the city of Ghent. That's why Ghent is very famous. That's where your freedom contract was drawn between the, whatever you call, Federation and the others and the British. There's a good saying, you never leave a piece of meat for a cat to look after, do you?
That's a good one.
I think Benjamin Franklin was also part of that negotiation.
There's a building you can go to where the negotiation has been done. Was agreed. Anyway, happy 4th of July. You have a few more hours of it left. Enjoy it. And maybe next July, 4th of July will be very different than this time.
Good evening. Sorry, this is Kay, so I'm auditing. Just something to add on. Americans, British, and most of the Western world, they really need to look into something called the straw man. You will see you're not free, and untold amounts of derivative has been on the stock market has been exchanged on the flesh of pound of flesh for a pound of gold. Something to do with the capital letters, and they created another clone out of you and they trade you on the stock market. So you're being securitized. Very deep information. Next week, I'll send the link. You can get information about Strowman. Serious stuff. Sorry.
Yes, I agree. We've been used as a big dumb giant in the employ of the British.
Well, Mark, the British have been used in the same employ.
Oh, they've run the world for about 600 years, I think, the last 600 years, ever since the Black Plague in Europe and so on. They controlled all the shipping for centuries.
No, I'm talking about the common man.
The common man, yeah.
Mr. Cash, good evening. How many names you will have for this virus? How much more?
Don't know. Now we run out of nations. Now we're going into alpha, beta, delta. I think you have another. How many alphabet do you have in the Greek alphabet?
What about phi and gamma?
Now we are in delta. And suddenly, out of nowhere, all the presidents speak about the delta. We hear the German chancellor. And the other world leaders talking about suddenly out of nowhere this week they all speak about that. It's just that they've been given a name sheet to read from and they all read the same. And I think August, it must be a gamma one.
I think they have a common denominator between them.
I keep out of this discussion because we know the answer, we know what it is.
Mr. Kesh, may I change the subject? I have a question about the universal community. The proliferation of the, what do you call it? Mutual self-destruction, mutually assured self-destruction, the prevention of that. It's my understanding that the universal community is the governing body over that. And
I do not know what you're talking about.
what I'm talking about is that the ethos of the universe dictates the flow of the plasma energy. And so the stopping of the transmission of the plasma energy is in conjunction with those who violate the ethos of the universe. In other words, the energy flows with the ethos of the universe.
No one can, or the way it works, no one can block anyone. It's your own conduct which blocks you from receiving. Then the totality of the behavior of the soul of this planet with its created things which blocks the man. But again, that blockage, as you call it, is in a physical matter state, not on the state of the soul of the man. We haven't seen a traffic jam of souls at the boundaries of the Earth atmosphere, waiting to be let out.
So that.
So this is the state of mind. I wrote something for Universal Council today. I hope they don't mind me reading it, but it was a question put by, I think, Marie. If I find it. There was a question, in a way, the answer to it, with the permission from Universal Council. In the universe, we are not stuck, as we are in the nursery of Earth to physical condition. As on Earth, some decide to have yellow flowers, and some red, and some be trees, and some be shrubs. But in fact, those who elevate to become a soul free from physicality become the scent of these, and even in essence of a scent, the whole attribute of the full plant exists. So if one day man educates himself enough, he will understand that from the scent of a flower, he can grow the flower. Now, what becomes of the physicality? Would it be in the scent? The fault and the thorn, the smell and the beauty, all are part of that scent, as it makes all its impression on our soul once it touches our soul. Now, does the scent carry physicality of the plant, the tree and the shrub, or on our soul? Or do we feel its feeling and shape through our memory of it in the universe? In a way, we will, when we get educated, the way we smell the flowers from a distance, one of the essence of we smell the smell of the planets and universes and galaxies, all have their own smell. And can we, with the smell of them, create the structure of them, replicate? And then this brings another position that if what we call the scent of a plant can stretch hundreds of kilometers, what would be the scent of the universe? And if one educated enough to be able to use the scent to create the plant just by the smell, then is life, the way we see it on this planet, created out of the scent of somewhere else in the universe, which could convert his scent to physicality of planet Earth with all its plants and animals. Are we brought here as a scent of, or were we created here as totality to become the scent of other planets in the universe? We were standing in the new exhibition hall a couple of days ago, and I said to a knowledge seeker, "You are planting two systems across the bridge, the gap in between, where we transfer to show for the first time entity from one machine to the other across the bridge, or across the gap. And many of these will be done as they're trying to transfer atoms across. We transfer the energy of the soul, and the physicality will take shape across as it needs." And with the new systems which are getting developed in our research centers, we will show this up in a short time. Then we have to understand, do we carry the scent of a person, or do we carry the soul of the person, and what did we create the physicality of the person? And then this goes back again to what we called the virgin birth. In the recent teaching, I deliberately refer to that I can make a stone to cry, if you remember. If you go the true essence of the birth of Mitra, Mitra was given birth in a cave from a stone, in a way from the essence of the creation of universe. And then in Christianity became the virgin birth. Historically, it's believed that Mitra came out of a stone. And then we see many religious followings as the caves, which exactly replicates the story of Mitra and the virgin birth and everything else we have seen. But this will be answered in new technology development in the coming time.
I had a couple of questions, or unless you're not finished.
Mark, before you ask those questions, I'd like to thank everybody here from the North American Corona team and the North American International Corona team. I want to thank everybody for allowing us to present today. What a wonderful meeting. I'm going to sign off, and Mark, I'm going to let you carry on. Thank you so much, Mr. Kesh, for being here. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Yes, it's approaching midnight in Europe. But one of my questions I've been thinking about, or a couple of questions I've been thinking about, is when you said Jesus walked off the cross, did he embed his soul in another individual? Did you literally mean walking off the cross? And then when you say you've been walking on this planet for thousands of years, you leave one city as an old man and you appear as a child in another city. Does that mean you had to go through the birth process, or did you embed your soul into a child and develop that way? Or am I missing the entire point?
I leave that to be answered in the future.
Okay.
But in so many ways, I've answered that question very recently to someone. Any other question?
I do have a question. Good evening, Mr. Kesh. It's evening here. I'm checking on what is going to happen to wildlife and trees and so on if you can go pretty well anywhere in a minute. Is there going to be any protection for our vertical people and the mammals?
The wildlife was doing perfect before man gets to it. And I think when the man leaves this planet, the wildlife will go back to its perfection and its evolution.
I'm thinking in terms of where I am now. If let's just say that very few people will worry about any of the growth, and they will chop and burn everything. So I'm just curious as to whether, you know, if we have any rules or some way of protecting the growth.
This planet can feed many times the present number of human beings. It's not short of land, it's not short of food. It's the learning of how to process and use and distribute and in a way place people. One of the biggest problems with the human race and colonization of this planet has been water resources. We see lives always stuck to the rivers and lakes and waterways. And with a new technology, which hopefully will take over, we can produce water anywhere. Though, so the centralization, the way we see it, will go out of hand. Once we move water resources away from cities where we can produce, by understanding of new technology, water at any point, anywhere on this planet, over time, the distribution of what we call population will change. Because we've seen it with Corona, we don't need it to be in offices, to be in buildings to work. Secondly, with the opening of the space, the depletion on the population on this planet will take a huge number of people out of the what we call life living on this planet. We will colonize faster than we colonize the United States. And the biggest problem will be, this is part of our negotiations in coming time, limitation on how we can look after the needy, the old, and the young during this transition time coming up in the next 20 to 50 years. The scientists will go to space, the educated will go to space, the young will go to space. And we will have the same problem as Japan has today. Large old population we don't want to look after. The governments and international programs will be a restriction on how we go. So a lot of things which we have destroyed will go back to nature. A lot of it, because we have no need for it, and secondly, we don't have the population for it. This is something we have already spoken about. Once we go from jet propulsion into maglev positioning, this planet will deplete population by about 50% in less than 10 years. 80% will never return.
So that means they don't find it very beautiful here.
Now they get too busy with the universe.
Yeah, I guess so. Thank you for that.
They get too busy. We see this I was reading an article, I don't know where it came from, that Japan has so many millions of houses empty in the villages and rural areas that people have left and are not going back. China has around 50, 60 million houses like this. And people just abandon cities and villages. And very soon, big cities will be abandoned. A lot of people will find confidence and solace in the new technology. But they'll come as a collective wave of new technologies.
So the change will happen.
We see it to start in the next few weeks. If it takes shape the way we see it, yes. Because we have no choice. We have an ever-growing population. And now one of the ways man found his way to control his population and his people was through wars. And now we can't escalate into wars. Corona is biggest stumbling block. And we're getting a lot of people sitting in their houses and not doing anything. And there has to be a solution. Governments cannot hold anymore. The restriction with Corona is going through the wall, but at the end of it, there has to be a new scientific breakthrough to change things, to bring a new understanding, new technologies that man gets busy with. And then, but this time, in getting busy with, man will find his way out of this planet, and we will not come back.
I guess I can see here we need water, and that will be the one focus for everybody.
Where are you at the moment?
In South Africa.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cape Town or Johannesburg?
No, I don't like to, that's too polluted. No, Durban, and it's polluted, but not as bad. And we have spent over 2 billion rands in bringing water trucks into the rural area in, I think, about less than 10 years. Imagine everybody could have a new house, in-ground water tanks for 2 billion rands.
Yeah, but we got to look at new technologies, but at the same time, collectively, we have to watch that we do not create secondary problems.
Yeah.
Then depleting, sorting one problem leads to creation of another problem. This is what's got to be avoided. And I presume our leaders will be wise enough to use it. We have no choice to go into evolution of new technology. We have no choice. We are getting pushed into that corner. We propose new structures very soon, extremely soon. And then we'll see how it will take shape. It will take 3 to 5 years to take shape, and then we'll see the next step of it. But as we said, we are still working on the target of 6th of June, 2022 for landing on the moon. Our colleagues in Iran would like to talk about a minute. We would like to talk about another.
To me, that's exciting beyond anything. It's very exciting.
We have committed our nation to it and we'll carry on.
We're waiting, Mr. Cash.
We are working on it.
Okay.
We just got to wait for 30 more days of transition, and in August the 4th, 5th, we will lay out our new rules.
Okay, so everything is moving very quickly in my eyes.
It's just the beginning. But generally speaking, it's we're going through a transition time, and we have to see how things take shape. Iran is committed to peace, but through exchange of technology. And my school of thoughts and the Iranian new leadership is the same.
Thank God for that. Thank the Creator for that one.
We'll see how we go.
Thank you, Mr. K.
Mr. Kesh, hi, sorry, it's Kay. Sorry to bother you. Just wanted to find out the fact that you said the elderly people and youngsters perhaps, but in particular elderly people, when the science opens up and people will be traveling out of the planet Earth and most probably 80% of them wouldn't come back. Would you not envisage that by the time this happens in 10 years' time, the elderly will be self-sufficient in terms of food, because they can use plasma to feed themselves, as well as have enough knowledge to take care of their health? Isn't that what you would envisage?
We envisage a lot of things, but it has to be, there's a lot of problem in these kind of changes and accepting it and being able to do. I explained in a conference some time ago, quite some time ago, the opening of the space technology will bring the same immigrations we saw with America. Some people left home with wealth to become richer. Some people left to find new life. And many, many people left to live the horrible life they lived. Whatever would have come would not be as bad as what they had. And this is what we see in the new space technology era when it opens up. Many people which stand hunger and pain and whatever will take into space that there might be a better solution in deep space somewhere. Mankind will not change. We'll see the repetition of the same. Even today is the 4th of July. If you look at the right across the United States, it wasn't built by all the richest and wealthiest of the people. Many people even, hidden the ships and anywhere else to get across the water because it would be a better life than what they had. Then we'll see this when transportation to space becomes the way we see it in the next 20, 30 years. Many people, hungry people, people from what we call the worst states of life will take into space because it cannot be worse than they had here. At least aboard of a ship, they have a food and everything fed to them without them wanting to. There is no hunger. This is how this planet will deplete.
But wouldn't they take their whole families with them? Their elderly parents?
I don't know. I know I've said this before, maybe. I was in Sierra Leone for election of the president. We were observers and assistant to the new elected government. as we were supporting and what we call, we were there to make sure people, we understand the work of our work. And I had to go from the couple of days after election. I was in what you call a Freetown University, and the president asked the chancellor to meet with me before he leaves for Europe, and then we found out we are both on the same plane anyway. And they were trying to rush me through what we call Freetown University to the house of the chancellor. And the professor who was taking me with his car to the house of the chancellor, he said, "Mr. Kesh, it's a traffic jam. I have to take a different route. Please close your eyes and don't tell chancellor I brought you this way." And we went through a shanty town, the most amazing shanty town. And when we got to a part of shanty town, I could hear Indian music. Ding, 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 ding. I thought, what is going on in the middle of Africa? Indian music. On our way, we passed a stand, like a hole in the wall, maybe 1 meter by 2 meter high. And there was an Indian guy opening shop there, and he was so happy to be there. And I said to the professor, you can imagine what condition he's come from India to hear that he's happy with this. That he puts music and he's happy to run a little shop 1 by 2 meter, even that. Mankind will reach that level. We have reached that level. That anything is better than what we have. And when the facilities are there, you don't need to be worried about the food or clothing. And what would you choose? The slums of India, hunger, disease, or being a passenger on a ship that might bring a new generation to a new part? This is what will come. This planet will deplete from population very rapidly. And this is why we try to get the ethos of war and killing out of the man. It's a consequence of development of new technology. Our great grandfathers went from village to village, maybe from village to town once every 10 years. With the new technology, we go from one country to another half of the planet across as we change our trousers. We are in a true time transition time, but now the present science cannot go any further. We need a breakthrough. We need a new look at the whole science. And our technology is one of the options. And many things connected together makes a new technology, new science.
Mr. Kesh, sorry. In order to make this transition a little bit more comfortable, so to speak, as well as creating a balance and not to disturb those who are, less fortunate, so to speak, than caught up with the science or the knowledge. So could we not, those who have learned the knowledge, could we not do what you suggested? Put those maglev systems as a satellite around the orbit and feed the people, so they're not left behind, or they're not starved, as well as
it'll be a combination of everything. It'll be a combination. The responsibility of nations will not be the way it is like a United Nations. But I call it a Christian club. We hear Germany now has officially requested to be a member of the Security Council, and with Japan and 1 or 2 more nations, Brazil. And when you look at it, without China, The rest is a Christian club. This cannot be. And this is what, on a larger scale, as Giscard d'Estaing said, the ex-president of France, EU is a Christian club. We can't let Turkey in. United Nations is another Christian club. When we create a system very much like Universal Council, that every language and religion actually religion doesn't count, but the language doesn't matter what color you carry, it could be a French black or white or blue-eyed, doesn't matter. Then you establish a structure which can be correct, and then these will arrange everything the way it has to be done. These are part of the work of what is to come. It's not going to be easy, but we need a sharp shock treatment. And this is part of it. Some people will be left behind and some people will be carried partially. But in general, it's a good thing.
How can you carry somebody partially?
Very easy. They would like to have a foot in both worlds.
That would be possible? Because I think that would be
Yeah, I'm an old Chinese
solution.
man. Yeah, I'm still an old Chinese man. I still like to live in China. I don't want to leave, but I like to be fed. Put a satellite above me, feed me, and I still live in my own old hut. Why not?
No, I meant going on the space craft.
The limitation of understanding it is limitation of development. If you can be on moon within minutes, or you can be, the first thing which will come to all of us without the shadow of a doubt, very rapidly, do we need a job? Many of you at the moment is shocked to you, but do we need a job? Are there any factories in the universe? Are there any jobs in the universe?
It's an awful mess to clean up here before anybody goes anywhere, I would have thought.
Then we clean it at our own will. Then we do it the way we see fit. It's a big change. We start pushing with this change in the coming weeks. And unless things go totally belly up, there is no choice. Europe is at the point of stagnation, employment around 15%. And there is no war, military equipment are not selling. Nations which had 50–60% of their industrial growth sitting on what we call military hardware and technology is not buying. Nations at war are running out of steam to fight. We don't have soldiers on there at any position. Two options left: bomb each other with nuclear bombs, or find a new solution technology and get as many people as you can out of this planet. Do not depopularize, but depopulation through new technology will become an alternative way of life. And all this will coincide by the birth of Mitra. And we'll see.
Thank you.
Mr. Cash, sorry, I'm stretching a bit. Those who have learned the knowledge or they have advanced to a certain extent where they can fly and leave the planet. Before they leave the planet, as their soul has elevated to the level where they can actually take a leap to the corner of space, we could collectively, I'm not going to put myself in there, but those who have achieved to that level, they can collectively make sure that planet Earth is not left in limbo. So take care of all the
there is technically, there is no possibility to leave Earth in the limbo. And there is no possibility to leave people behind. The position is that many of us will choose to take that step. Many of us will choose to travel through the soul, and many of us will choose to travel through the space technology of equipment. It's not anymore that you have one option, there's a new craft. You have many options. Move into the deserts, start living in deserts where nobody lives, and make oasis with the new systems you have. Go back on the Keshe Foundation Oasis page. I don't know if anybody has it. I haven't seen it for years. We used to have a program called Oasis System. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've heard it. I don't remember it particularly going into it.
Yeah, we used to have an Oasis page on the Keshe Foundation, where there was a tent with the light in it and the water and everything. With the new technology, that's possible. I can't find it. I don't know. It's on the phone, which was stolen in Ghana. But we have a, I don't know if any of you have access to it. You can put it up. Now we can put up a tent anywhere in the universe. Desert, moon.
We'll have it ready for next week unless someone has it.
I can't remember. We were going through documents this week, and amazing enough, the original papers for confirmation of the CO2 as a plasma Raman spectroscopy, the very original papers from Ghent University, the whole folder we found. This was in the archives, and it's amazing. The first printout of confirmation of GANs as a plasma, and it's amazing. It's 30-40 page document, but all the original computer printouts, infrared printouts, are all in there. And one day it'll be as part of the archives as a new technological development. Don't worry about planet Earth. It's resilient and it's blue and it's beautiful and it stays that way. It's just that the suffering in it will reduce. But it's a man who can choose to travel with the soul of the equipment.
Mr. Keshe, I've sent you the Oasis system.
Can you? Yep, I've lost this one. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Trust Ivana is the Keshe's mainframe computer.
Thank you very much. You can. I try to share it if it comes up. Yep. This is the original Oasis system, cache technology when we used to be. Creating a proper place of comfort and dignity for everyone. And with a new knowledge, you can build this anywhere in the universe, let alone on this planet.
Is what the Israelites had traveling through the wilderness any sort of similarity to the system? Can we have a sound check from someone, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I was busy trying to save this picture. We have it somewhere, but now it's nice to be there. In a way, yes, but it was a knowledge. Understanding. People have survived in deserts and in cold conditions for thousands of years. Once you know how to live, how to survive it, it's irrelevant where you are, because you know the terrain, you know to understand. I was telling some knowledge seekers, not very recently, but a few months ago, I remember being an oasis for years in a desert. It's so vivid, it's so clear. There was one tree and one water well. Never moved from it. I just knew it's time I have to be there. And you can survive. People survive in North Pole. Eskimos live in the most harshest way, but they live.
Mr. Kesh, if you're still there, can these still be made again, or have you stopped making them?
We never made it. This is a concept, but the reality of this was built in China in a space reactor.
I would definitely want to go into something like this.
This is the what you call, we have achieved plasma energy generation and sustaining, and a new factory in Iran will go into power generation, a new cycle, and then it can be done. Once you create the first generation of energy, creating water and the rest is nothing. Purification and secondly, interaction of plasmatic fields. If you go through fire, you have to go through boiling and everything. If you go through energy production through plasma, you don't need to heat up a room. You create a field interaction that you feel warm within.
This is beautiful.
The new air enhancement units, which have been sold, are part of the structure of this work. They are developed to create this condition. We would like to know how people feel with it, how they interact with it. How do they feel in the house? Do they feel more hungry? They feel satisfied? The food reduction, the energy reduction. The new air enhancement unit has been deliberately made for part of the development of the space technology.
So, Mr. Cash, if we have people visiting from the from outside, let's say from the universe, they probably wouldn't need anything maybe like we do. They would, but maybe they would want something like that.
That again, as I said, depends how they travel. They travel in the dimension of physicality, or they travel different dimensions, different knowledge and technologies. We have opened a small gap in the knowledge of the life in the universe. There are many, many different ways to feed the man or to sustain the energy of the soul of the man.
So they're independent, really.
Yep.
Okay.
You see many people who travel from deep space, they carry small objects with them. Very irrelevant objects. Very much, we call it maybe like a ring, maybe like a piece of something attached to it. These are the energy resources. This is where they get everything from.
Wow, thanks for that. I love this.
Yeah, but we introduced this in a very slight way a few years ago, but it got hijacked and all sorts of things with it, and I withdrew it. But in the near future, we will release these kind of technologies in the form of cups, because it's the easiest way.
A small cup.
Yep.
Wow. Wow, thanks.
Yeah, we see in the work of the new cups we released, how we're getting responses back, how it works, how people make mistakes, and how they misuse it, or they misread it, or the lack of communication between us and them. And we see the result. We see the result. We see the effectiveness of them. And with the factory in China opening up in the next 6 months or so, then we increase these kind of line of productions. Anyway, it's getting very late for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time and your knowledge shared today.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Mr. Kesh, I've got a suggestion for you. You mentioned we only have to drink 30 cc's from those cups a day. You could
3
attach.
times a day.
Pardon?
3
3 times a day, yeah. But the way to measure it would be with the whiskey measurer. The 1 ounce.
You're
cup.
drinking, right?
You
What
want
are
a
we gonna do
shot.
to the? What are we gonna do to the Muslim guy in Mecca who doesn't have a whiskey measure?
Well, but that means he ties it to the whiskey, but he can tie it to send him to somebody else.
Good measure. Good measure. It's a 2 mouthful. But something in that region.
2 sips, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank
See
you.
you next
Thank
week.
you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.